Welcome everybody, this is Kokorin TCG, and today I will be going over my Shadow Paladins deck list. Long story short, I recorded a pack opening for the Spike Brothers event, and I realized after I had finished recording and going through all of my packs that I didn't align blue stacks in my OBS, so the bottom of it is kinda cut off. I don't know what I want to do with that footage, so in the meantime, I will be posting a video about Shadow Paladins today. Overall, I think that Shadow Paladins are the clan is overrated in Zero. I think IRL it's a much stronger clan, but in Zero it just doesn't do one thing good enough, and it kind of suffers from being average in everything, which usually isn't a bad thing. But because Zero is such a hyper aggressive game, this deck just doesn't do enough to keep up with the rest of the meta. And so lately, I've been seeing a lot of Shadow Paladin players playing stands, playing crits, and really playing around with their list a little bit, maxing out PBO and just trying to luck into their PBOs to help push that extra damage when they need to. But overall, I still think that this is a very strong contender in Tier 1 and is a cut above the rest, although it can feel a little lackluster at times, especially if you're not hitting all your pieces. And so, to go over the build, I play full bow, 9 draw, and 4 heal. It's pretty standard for Shadow Paladins, and I feel like full bow is really nice for plussing and gaining board advantage for just playing cards. In the grade 1s, I play 4 PG, 3 Aaron Rod, 4 Blaster Javelin, and 2 Chiron. The 4 ofs in my grade 1s are pretty self-explanatory. Blaster Javelins for the plussing, and the PGs are for defensive plays. But I play 3 Aaron Rod because sometimes you still do brick and kind of lose out on certain pieces you need, and it can help bridge the gap. And also it is a 7k base, so if you're using for rearguard column, it's multifaceted and is still a better target than using your Blaster Javelin. And then in the final 2 slots, I have 2 Chiron, and Chiron is a great card for Shadow Paladins because I feel like one of the biggest weaknesses of Shadow Paladins, outside of missing your Blaster Javelin, is it just does not hit good numbers outside of the Vanguard column. The Vanguard column hits great numbers. You have PBO at 13k, and then you have the Chiron, it hits 21. But the rear columns really suffer from just being short 1,000 or 2,000 on power, and so sometimes you'll just won't be able to swing for that second or third damage because your columns suffer. And so Chiron helps bridge that gap. In the grade 2s, I have 1 Blaster Dark because it is searched out by the Blaster Javelin, and playing 1 really allows you to play other cards in your list and just allows for flexibility. I play 4 in the main because plussing is really strong, and the meta is so fast right now that if you don't have those 2 PGs, or you're not constantly drawing into your PGs, then you will just lose to those 9 crit Azels, Azel builds. You will lose to those Angel Feathers and those Great Natures that keep putting crits on their rear guards or keep restanding, and so it can be really hard to come out on top in this limit break meta with Shadow Paladins. And so I've opted to play 4 in the main. In prior metas though, I felt like, at least last set, you didn't really need 4. 3 was perfectly fine, but now that the game's kind of sped up, the extra +1 from the main is really strong. And then I play 3 of the counter chargers because you need that extra counter blast refunded once or twice per game just to make sure you can do all of the plays you need to push for game. I play 4 Masquerade because it is a 12k base on the rear guard circle when my Vanguard has Blaster in its name, which is the whole ride chain, and so it really allows this deck to hit numbers that it normally wouldn't be able to, and kind of also, along with Chiron, helps bridge the gap in the numbers department for Shadow Paladins. And then I play 1 of the 10k vanilla because forcing my opponent to play boosters to get rid of my intercepts combos really well with cards like PBO and PBD. In the grade 3s, I play 3 PBO because Persona Blast is an inconsistent mechanic, and while it's a little bit better, potentially IRL Vanguard, at least in Vanguard 0, I feel like it's not a very strong mechanic, and you're only getting a crit and plus 10k, which for some people it means a lot, but your main purpose of PBO is just to get that nice cross-right defensive number of 13k, and that cross-right number can sometimes help you win a matchup just by itself. I play 4 PBD because PBD is a great card, and you just need to play 4, or else it puts a lot of pressure on the player to get their first Blaster Javelin to search out their Blaster Dark, and then get a second Blaster Javelin to discard another grade 3 from your hand, which you're hoping isn't your PBO, because you want to be holding onto your PBOs in your hand. So that's why I play 4. I play heals on the Dark Dictator because Dark Dictator is also one of those cards that helps bridge the gap with numbers, and giving that 5k boost to your rearguard columns can be the difference between you having enough power to push through the 6 damage heal or push that 5th damage that turn before your final turn. And then I play 2 Bad Barkar, and the only reason why I only have 2 is because I didn't have much space for more, but if I could, I would play maybe 3. Its main function is to kind of combo with PBD, PBO, and occasionally with your Nemain or your Aaron Rod if you're still missing pieces. And I find that it's probably one of the strongest grade 3s and one of the most useful grade 3s that Shadow Paladins have, just because it is a free plus. But at the same time, I don't like it on heal. Just, it feels bad when it's on heal and I play it, and I feel a lot better when my Dark Dictator is on heal and then I have to play it to push for game. And so that's my reasoning for not having Bad Barkar on the heal. And so this is the list. I'm pretty proud of this list, and I have used this a lot in Conquest formatted tournaments. It does pretty well, and it can counter a good portion of the meta that rely on their grade 2s, like especially Golds. Golds is a very popular deck. Very expensive, but very popular. And I feel like Shadow Paladins is one of the few decks that, in the right circumstances, can shut down a Gold Paladin player. And so, my starting hand is absolutely awful, and I kind of want to hold the PG because I could lose if I don't have the PG. But I'm actually just going to chuck everything except for the PG and hope I get a Blaster Javelin. I get the Blaster Javelin. So, this is definitely going to be a game. And my opponent's thinking very hard about their mulligan. Gold Paladins is just it's such a fun deck, and it's such a fast deck for like climbing rank and just playing games. And I draw into an main, so my hand is looking very strong. I'm going to play the Blaster Javelin, and I'm going to get my search for Blaster Dark. And so I'm kind of looking at my hand, and I don't think I'll suffer from overdrawing. And so I'm going to hold my hand just to see what I get before I start committing boosters to my rearguard columns. Okay, so they do play the Niue, the Nimue. I keep butchering names. But they don't have the counterblast, so this probably means that they do have the Balmains and the Gareth to use Criff's skill, which is totally fine. Hopefully I get a draw trigger. Ah! Yeah, I hate to see it. It's a whiffed heal. And I get the PBD. So I pretty much have everything I need. And if I was to Nemain right now, I actually wouldn't get much for it. I don't think I really need to Nemain here, because then I'm getting rid of good boosters or good cards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this Masquerade. I'm going to have it boosted by the Chiron. And then I'm just going to push 2 damage, because my hand was already optimal. And so this means if they only push, well, I got the heal. What I was going to say is if I didn't get the heal, if they ended up pushing only 1 damage, I'd still have enough counterblast for PBD if I wanted to push a crit. In this case, I don't think I'm in much of a position to do so, but you really have to make sure you're thinking about all your plays. And so I'm kind of interested to see if my opponent actually has the Balmains and the Gareth, there seems to be a pause here. So they either thinking if it's worth it or they don't have it. I'm assuming they don't have it. They don't have it, but they have the Vivian. And moments like these is why I prefer to play Spring Breeze over Vivian. Very interesting. Just gonna go ahead and push 2 damage. Definitely will be utilizing the main next turn. They play draw triggers too, which is interesting. So this is probably the 4 draw, 5 stand build. Ooh, and they whiff a PG. That's really good for me. And then I lose another Nemain. You hate to see it. Pretty sure they'll probably give me a grade 3 here. Oh, Blaster Javelin. So now I have a discard target for my Nemain now. I'm going to ride the PBD. And another great animation. And I'm going to put the full bow on this column here. And then I'm going to go ahead and play the Nemain and pray for another grade 2. It's not really super important, but it would be nice. PBD and another Nemain. What I'll do... I don't really lose anything for just doing a double Nemain board here. I don't really need this PBD. I'm going to draw another 2 cards. And I get a Bad Bar Car to help build a board for next turn, and I get my second PG. Extremely good. And then I'll just push them to 3. And then I'll get to see if my opponent plays self-damagers in their Criff build, or if they play a lot of self-damagers in their Criff build. And I get a draw trigger into another Blaster Javelin. And he heals. Oh my god. You hate to see it, but that probably means they won't be able to limit break next turn. I can't say for sure. And let's see if they have the Azel at least. I hope. They don't have the Azel, but they are going to use the Garmor here and build a board. I can definitely see them like calling a Lopier. Yeah, call the Lopier and then build their board that way. They ditch a Pelennor, so that's 2 Pelennor down. And they get a trip for more Counterblast. That's a pretty good call. Okay. And then they're going to attack me with the trip. And I get a heal trigger. This is perfect. I know, right? I think this is when I emote my opponent. You know, a heal for a heal. So I top deck into another heal. I'm going to right skip. And I'm going to use this Bad Bar Car here just to build a column. And I top deck into another domain. And I'll get rid of... I'm going to hold on to this Dark Dictator because it could be really useful later. I'm going to get rid of the Blaster Javelin, actually, to draw 2 more cards. And not great, but not awful. So I'll hold on to these for later. And then I'll be able to hopefully push my opponent to 3 this time. And then, yeah. So at this point, what will be really beneficial is if I can get some counter charge going. Just so that way I can start counterblasting for the inevitable PBO that I hope I'll be able to play. I'm already starting to run low on cards, so definitely a lot of what's left in the list is triggers. So I might be a little worried that the Gold Paladin might just be able to grind this out, especially if they have Azel plus a self-damager within the next 2 turns, which is very possible. And so my opponent kind of taking their time here, figuring out what they're going to do. My hand is hot garbage right now. No grade 2 in sight. And he's going to Garmor again. So they're going to slow roll into their Azel. And then there goes another Palinor. That should be his 3rd Palinor. So if anything, he has 1 more. And they get a Vivian. So he might be able to do some cool Vivian combos here, which would be really interesting to see if they actually work for my opponent. And they get the draw trigger. I would probably put on the PG, so then I could... Oh, he doesn't have counterblast for Vivian. If he did, that would be really, really strong. But these Garmors definitely coming in the clutch for my opponent. And I get a draw trigger. I'll still have to take the damage, though. So... The nice thing is if I put him on Limit Break, he only gets 1 counterblast, so I get my 3rd PG, so I'm set for life. I'm very set for life. I could try to push a crit here just because my hand is so huge. I might actually just try to do that. Bad Barkar behind the Vanguard. And a PBO. Okay. So I'm actually going to get rid of this whole right side of my board. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to get rid of this Vivian. Get a crit, and then I can kind of push through my opponent's PG this turn, which should be really beneficial. And then I'm going to play this Masquerade and play this Aaron Rod behind the Blaster. My bad, the Masquerade. And then I'm going to push, see if I can try to push some damage here. So 1. And then everything to the face. And if he happens to have the PG, it's fine. And it goes through. Let's go. And that is Shadow Paladins.